It's a very good evening to all our viewers and welcome to a new edition of Panorama News, our bulletin that brings you the latest in the world of politics, economics and sports. My name is Angie Meher and I'll be with you tonight, and we begin with a look at the political headlines. President Sisi holds summit talks with Jordanian King Abdullah II. United Nations-backed Syria talks will restart with rebels on back foot. Iraq forces press assault on Daesh south of Mosul. Welcome back. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi held summit talks with visiting Jordanian King Abdullah II at the Ittihadiyya Palace on Tuesday, which covered means of boosting bilateral relations in various domains, as well as the latest developments in the Middle East region, notably efforts underway to put the Middle East peace process back on track and the current situation in Syria. The two leaders also discussed ongoing efforts to fight terrorism and reviewed the upcoming Arab Summit, which will be held in Jordan next month. The details.
During their summit talks in Cairo on Tuesday, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Jordan's King Abdullah II discussed bilateral relations and a number of regional issues, including the Palestinian cause and the Syrian conflict. On the Palestinian cause, the two leaders reviewed mutual coordination to reach a two-state solution and establish a Palestinian state based on the June 4, 1967 borders, with East Jerusalem as a capital, which is a national constant that cannot be given up. They reviewed future movements to break the gridlock with the Middle East peace process, especially with U.S. President Donald Trump's administration taking power. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Ala Yousef said the two leaders had held bilateral talks in a closed session before holding an expanded meeting that was attended by the prime ministers of the two nations. According to the spokesman, President Sisi held the distinguished bilateral ties and constant consultations and coordinations in various domains as well as issues of mutual concern. President Sisi said he was looking forward to attending the upcoming Arab Summit in Jordan, expressing his confidence that Amman would succeed in hosting this crucial event, which is expected to release important resolutions regarding so many challenges facing the Arab region. In this respect, President Sisi expressed Egypt's willingness to coordinate efforts with Jordan to reach this target. For his part, King Abdullah praised Egypt's pivotal role in serving Arab and regional issues and its efforts in consolidating the joint Arab action. He said the talks centered on strategic bilateral ties and means to foster bilateral relations, adding that the two leaders confirmed the significance of continuing joint higher committees, which are headed by the two nations' premiers, as well as following up the implementation of agreements and memos of understanding being signed during the last meeting of the Joint Committee in August 2016. The two leaders stressed the significance of consolidating the Arab League as one of the crucial joint Arab mechanisms to unite the Arab actions and status regarding dangers confronting the Arab nations. Ahead of the one-day visit, President Sisi received the Jordanian monarch and an official reception ceremony was held at the presidential palace.
A conference gathering heads of high and constitutional courts in Africa concluded in Cairo on Tuesday. The two-day conference was organized by Egypt's Higher Constitutional Court in cooperation with the Foreign Ministry's Agency for Cooperation for Development. Addressing the inaugural session, Prime Minister Sharif Ismail welcomed the attendees. He said the Constitutional Court proves that the law is prevailing in the country. The Speaker of Parliament, Dr. Ali Abdel, said the role of the Constitutional Court is vital in democratic regimes. He said that constitutional courts are the guarantors that the judicial system is being applied. The conference brought together 25 heads of the constitutional courts in Africa. The head of the Higher Constitutional Court, Councillor Abdul Wahab Abdul Razik, and the participants discussed exchanging expertise in the field of constitutional judiciary as well as organizing training sessions. On the sidelines of the conference, Nile TV's correspondent Nada Ibrahim held this exclusive interview with the head of the Nigerian Constitutional Court, Justice Bello Ishaq.
Very, very important, because when you meet to share experiences, to get best international practices that will in turn improve your own system, it makes the forum an excellent idea, just as it is now. We are over 26 countries here, African countries, each one with its own experiences on the manner and ways of addressing certain challenges in the judiciary. And by this exercise, each one of us, I believe, will go back better than he came, better informed, and then with new ideas on how to address common challenges that are various judiciaries. We have been talking about case management. We've been talking about the issues of conflicts that bedevil the African countries and globally, and the various regime in terms of legislation that are put in place to address these crimes, new emerging crimes, also how best to address corruption cases. This we have discussed and we are still discussing, and many are. Well, there should be increased communication, yes, increased communication amongst the various judiciaries on how they have been handling such terrorism cases, how fast are the judiciaries able to decide to finality. Some of these cases are very crucial in this very forum, this very conference, and I think we are gaining a lot.
On the sidelines of the conference, Nile TV's correspondent Nada Ibrahim held this exclusive interview with the head of the Zambian Constitutional Court, the Deputy Chief Justice M.S. Mwana Mwambwa.
It's very important in the sense that it promotes the spirit of Pan-Africanism, which entails cooperation among nations at large. With regard to judiciaries of Africa, it's a platform for sharing best practices and strategies in the running of the judiciaries, especially case management, dealing with case backlogs. So far, the main one is how you manage cases, backlog of cases. In a number of jurisdictions, cases take too long to be heard and determined. Some jurisdiction can go up to 10 years. People are complaining. The question is, what measures do you put in place to address that? So that's been the main topic, the most rewarding topic so far. We are sharing ideas on how to do case management. Some of the things you can resort to are computerizing your court operations, employing research advocates or law clerks as they're known in certain areas. Going for what is known as alternative dispute resolutions, ADR in short. This involves arbitration. Instead of cases being heard in court, you go for arbitration. You solve them amicably outside court, or go for mediation. That's a short and cheaper way of doing things.
To regional news, Syrian peace talks due to start this week in Geneva are based on the broad mandate of a UN resolution that asked the United Nations mediator to hold talks on a political transition process. We have the details. The top advisor to the United Nations envoy for Syria, Michael Content, said Tuesday that their main guidance for the first intra-Syrian peace talks in 10 months will be a Security Council resolution that calls for political transition. UN envoy Staffan de Misture's finishing touches on arrangements for Thursday's start of talks in Geneva between the government and opposition delegations, the fourth round since early last year. The last UN-mediated talks were suspended in April amid renewed fighting. A seasoned diplomat, a cardiologist and a lawyer will represent Syria's two sides at the UN-brokered peace talks that begin in Geneva on Thursday. The diplomat Bashar al-Jafari is the Syrian government's veteran envoy at the United Nations, and he will square off against opposition figures Nasser al-Hariri, the cardiologist, and lawyer Mohammed Sabra. Comments in Geneva came as some 40 human rights groups and other organizations said the talks should prioritize 5 key human rights issues during the negotiations. The group said in a statement Tuesday that achieving respect and promotion for human rights during any transition and post-conflict will require key legislative and constitutional amendments to enshrine rights protection in law. Meanwhile, CIA-coordinated military aid for rebels in northwest Syria has been frozen since they came under major attack last month, raising doubts about foreign support key to the war against President Bashar al-Assad. Diplomatic tensions escalated between Turkey and Iran Tuesday as the countries traded accusations over their roles in the Syrian conflict in the Middle East. Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu lashed out at Iran in a speech to the Munich Security Conference in the weekend, saying some of its actions had undermined security in the region and urged Tehran to promote stability. The pair have been regional rivals for centuries but have sought to forge a pragmatic relationship in recent years, with Tehran strongly supporting President Recep Tayyip Erdogan after last year's failed military attempt. But Turkey and Iran have been on opposite sides of the conflict in Syria, with Ankara seeking the ouster of President Bashar al-Assad and Tehran, along with Russia, his key backer. To Iraq, where forces consolidated positions on Tuesday after blasting their way to the southern edge of Mosul in an assault Baghdad and its partners hope will spell the doom of the Daesh terrorists. The details. Iraqi forces were upbeat on the third day of a rekindled offensive in the operation, which was launched on October 7th to retake Iraq's second city, Mosul. A myriad of forces, including federal police, elite interior ministry, rapid response units, soldiers and paramilitaries, raced towards the disused airport, which lies on Mosul's southern approach. On Monday, Iraqi forces backed by jets and gunships retook Al-Busayfa village, which Daesh had used as its main base south of Mosul. In the small hilltop village, all of Mosul visible in the distance, federal police in dark blue camouflage manned armored vehicles and fired the occasional round. Holes from shrapnel were visible in the perimeter walls and facades of several houses, including the peach-painted outer walls of one home commandeered by the police forces. The US-led coalition has been fighting Daesh in Iraq and Syria since 2014 and has carried out more than 10,000 strikes. After the Iraqi advance in East Mosul was slowed by stiffer-than-expected resistance late last year, the coalition stepped up its involvement. Earlier this week, U.S. Brigadier General Chuck Corcoran said as many as 50 aircraft were over the city at one time. He said drones circled lower down and fighter jets in the middle and U-2 spy planes as well as other surveillance craft on top. An estimated 750,000 civilians, almost half of them children, are trapped in West Mosul with dwindling food and medical supplies. An Israeli military court on Tuesday sentenced a soldier to 18 months in prison for shooting dead an injured Palestinian. The judge handed down the sentence a month after the soldier was found guilty of manslaughter for killing Abdel Fattah al-Sharif as he lay on the ground in the southern occupied West Bank in March of last year. The court announced that the soldier would begin his sentence on March. Israeli ministers for a pardon, whilst the Palestinian government and the victim's family condemned the sentence as too lenient. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei called on Tuesday for the complete liberation of Palestine from what he called the tumor of Israel, renewing his regime's refusal to recognize Israel's right to exist. Khamenei was speaking at the 6th International Conference in support of the Palestinian Intifada, or uprising, one of a number of showcase events the Tehran authorities organized in solidarity with the Palestinians. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani and the conservative brothers who head parliament and the judiciary, Ali Larijani and Ayatollah Sadiq Larijani, flanked the supreme leader as he spoke. Among the guests from the 80 countries taking part in the conference were the parliament speakers of Algeria, Mali, North Korea, Lebanon, as well as Syria. French far-right National Front presidential candidate Marine Le Pen cancelled a meeting on Tuesday with Lebanon's Grand Mufti, its top cleric for Sunni Muslims, after refusing to wear a headscarf for the encounter. Le Pen, among the runners for the presidency, is using a two-day visit to Lebanon to bolster her foreign policy credentials 9 weeks from the April 23rd first round, and maybe partly targeting potential Franco-Lebanese votes. After meeting with the Lebanese President Michel Aoun and Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri, she'd been scheduled to meet the Grand Mufti Sheikh Abdullah II. 3 men have been arrested in France and are being questioned by the anti-terrorist services on suspicion of wanting to go to Syria or planning attacks in France. The 3 were arrested by French intelligence agents in the town of Clermont-Ferrand and Marseille and in the Paris region. The suspects have been arrested as part of a preliminary investigation that was in January on suspicion of leaving for Syria or committing a terrorist act in France. The Libyan Red Crescent said Tuesday at least 74 bodies of African migrants had washed ashore in western Libya, the latest tragedy at sea along a perilous trafficking route to Europe. The bodies were found near the western Libyan city of Zawiya, whilst a torn rubber boat, the kind that usually carries up to 120 people, was found nearby. The details.
The Red Crescent announced on Tuesday that the bodies of 74 migrants who drowned in the Mediterranean trying to reach Europe had washed up on a beach west of the Libyan capital. It said residents of the village of Harcha outside Zawiya, 45 kilometers from Tripoli, alerted the emergency services after finding Iraq on the beach with bodies inside. The Red Crescent's branch in Zawiya said that more bodies were discovered elsewhere on the beach and still more were feared to be in the sea. The International Organization for Migration said the boat was reported to have foundered on Sunday, leaving as many as 100 people dead. The agency said traffickers reportedly stole the engine and left it to drift, adding that a survivor, reportedly in a coma, was transferred to hospital. According to the agency, if confirmed, the deaths would bring the total number of migrants killed trying to cross the Mediterranean so far this year to more than 365. It said that 187 migrants were rescued off Zawiya on Saturday and were currently being held in a detention center. The agency said migrant arrivals in Italy had risen sharply this year compared with the same period of 2016. As of Sunday, 10,020 had arrived compared with 6,589 between January 1st and February 18th last year. People smugglers have taken advantage of the chaos gripping Libya since the 2011 revolution to greatly boost their lucrative trade. Most departures take place from the west of Libya, usually heading for Italy 300 kilometers away across the Mediterranean. Europeans are considering measures aimed at blocking the arrival of thousands of migrants, alarming NGOs, which fear that those stranded in Libya may suffer mistreatment. In the absence of an army or a regular police force in Libya, several militias act as coast guards but are often accused themselves of or even involvement in the people smuggling business. More than 180,000 people made the crossing last year.
The United Nations Children's Agency UNICEF said on Tuesday nearly 1.4 million children are at imminent risk of death in famines in Nigeria, Somalia, South Sudan and Yemen. People are already starving to death in all 4 countries, and the World Food Programme says more than 20 million lives are at risk in the next 6 months. We have the details.
The United Nations Children Agency warned on Tuesday that almost 1.4 million children are at imminent risk of death as famine threatens parts of South Sudan, Nigeria, Somalia and Yemen. UNICEF said 185,000 children were expected to suffer from severe acute malnutrition in Somalia this year, but the figure was likely to rise to 270,000 in the next few months. The agency said Somalia also faces and in Yemen's conflict, nearly 500,000 children have severe acute malnutrition. It noted that the number of children with severe acute malnutrition is expected to reach 450,000 this year. According to the agency, nearly 500,000 children are expected to face severe malnutrition in Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa states. The UNICEF announcement comes a day after famine was declared in parts of Unity State in South Sudan. The conflict has increasingly split the country along ethnic lines, leading the United Nations to warn of a potential genocide. UNICEF said 270,000 children in South Sudan were severely malnutritioned. Save the Children, a charity, said on Monday that more than 100 million children in South Sudan were at risk of starving. Meanwhile, South Sudan's President Salva Kiir promised aid agencies safe access to hunger-stricken civilians a day after his government declared a famine parts in the war-ravaged country. South Sudan has also been hit by the same East African drought that has pushed Somalia back to the brink of famine. Another 462,000 children are suffering from severe acute malnutrition in Yemen, where 2 years of war have caused economic collapse and severe restrictions on shipping. Famine has been ongoing since last year in parts of northeastern Nigeria, where the government is fighting Boko Haram terrorist group. South Sudan has been mired in civil war since 2013, and the United Nations said on Monday it was unable to reach some of the worst hit areas because of the insecurity. UNICEF for months have warned about severe malnutrition in northeastern Nigeria, especially in areas that have been largely inaccessible because of the Boko Haram insurgency.
At least 7 people were killed when multiple Taliban suicide bombers attacked a court complex in northern Pakistan on Tuesday, the latest in a series of assaults which have raised fears that militants are regrouping. One bomber was briefly on the loose inside the busy complex in the Tangi area of Jersana district, but was killed by police some 20 minutes after the attack began. A second bomber was shot dead by security forces, and a third died when he detonated his vest outside the main gates of the facility in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province. The attack was claimed by the Jamaat al-Ahrar faction of the Pakistani Taliban, which carried out a series of apparently coordinated assaults last week, including a powerful bomb blast in Lahore which killed 14 people. Myanmar said on Tuesday that police were investigating the murder of 4 people in northern Rakhine State, days after ending a military campaign in the area the United Nations has compared to ethnic cleansing. The corpses of 3 women and a man were found buried in a field in a village last Thursday. The bodies were discovered the day after the government announced the end of army clearance operations in the north of the ethnically divided state that were launched to find militants who attacked police posts in October. The United Nations has said this was used as a cover for a 4-month crackdown in which security forces butchered hundreds of Rohingya Muslims. An Australian pilot and 4 American tourists on a golfing vacation were killed when a light plane crashed in flames into a shopping mall on Tuesday. The plane crashed shortly after takeoff from the Australian city of Melbourne. The 5 were on board a twin-engine Beechcraft Super King Air, which crashed about 45 minutes before the direct factory outlet mall in suburban Essendon was to open its doors for the day.